Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll give people about 5 minutes to kind of settle in. We realize that there's a little bit of a time zone difference going on. Apparently, there's two separate central times, and time zone changes here in America don't necessarily affect Mexican time zones the same way. So apologize if there's any confusion about the timing of the event, but wanted to give people a chance to hop in and let us get set up here for just a second. And feel free to say hi in the comments. Feel free to drop your LinkedIn. We're super excited to be meeting with Tanya Tiggett and Michelle Kwok today. Michelle with FLIK and Tonya with Tiggett Co. And we'll get into that a little bit further, let them explain their stories. But super excited to kind of introduce who they are and kind of introduce this series as well. This is a newer series that Tango is doing. Tango, we're a software development and staff augmentation consultancy. Most of our team, about 99% of our team, are located in Mexico, Argentina, and Latin America, and we help connect those developers to North American companies to just help boost their development, boost innovation. We have a strong passion for product here, so really excited to introduce these women in tech and just kind of introduce the idea of why it's so important to support women in technology, but also to provide educational opportunities for women in technology as well. So we'll give them about 3 more minutes, let everybody kind of settle in. I see people saying hi in the comments. Hey, everyone. Just realized I was muted. Okay, we'll give people just a couple more minutes to kind of settle in. Again, feel free to drop your LinkedIn in the comments if you want to connect. I will have my wonderful associate Carla drop the LinkedIn links for Michelle and Tanya here in just a minute, and periodically throughout the talk as well. Okay, so today we wanted to start the Women for Women in Tech series here at Tango. And the primary reason that we're doing this is because we noticed that while we did have a very inclusive culture here at Tango, we wanted to make it a little bit more inclusive. So we wanted to provide this as not just a learning opportunity for ourselves, but for kind of others as well, right? We figure if we're going to learn, might as well take everybody with us. And so Carla and I have been working on, developing this series, working on kind of collecting speakers. I do want to give a quick shout out to Carla, but also to everyone on our wonderful team, several who are on the call here today. but everyone who has been incredibly supportive here at Tango with this deep understanding that if we're going to make changes to our culture, we need to do so intentionally, and might as well do it publicly as well, right? Draw everybody's attention in, all of us learn together, because we want to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable and not feeding into the same biases over and over, but getting that kind of external review, what we're doing, what we could do better, and then just kind of, again, taking everybody along for the journey as well. So today we have Michelle Kwok, who is the co-founder and CEO at FLIK, and Tanya Tiggett, who is the founder at Tiggett Co. Both incredibly motivational women that have empowered me personally to be extremely excited about this talk, but also excited about women in tech in general, and why talking about it, why supporting women, why educating women, why having educational resources specifically for women and supportive resources for women is very important, right? So the primary reason that we're doing this, right, is because there should be more women in tech. There's no really reason why there shouldn't be, right? We understand that diverse environments foster a stronger environment and have proven, further results as well. The statistic that we're seeing today, though, is that women only hold about 20% of available tech jobs. They only represent about 5% of CTOs in Fortune 1000 companies. And about 2.8% of all venture capital funding in the US goes to women. So we're looking to kind of change the ratio, so to speak, right? We want to make sure to show off the supportive and educational resources for women throughout this series. And I hope that, you're not just watching today, but looking forward to kind of watching our progress as we continue to grow and continue to learn as well. With that, we have our first speaker, Michelle Kwok. She is, again, co-founder of FLIK. She's matched over 2,000 women founders and leaders to their apprentices in over 55 countries since launching in January 2020. And she was actually just featured in a Forbes article last month, which, if we're lucky, hopefully she'll tell us a little bit more about that. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and invite Michelle. And forgive me, all, I'm a little bit new to this platform. And here we go. There we go. Give her a minute to settle in here. Please feel free to drop any questions or comments that you have in the comment section as we go along. We'll collect those questions. Hey, Michelle.
Hi. Thank you so much for that intro.
Absolutely. Yeah. Would you give us a little bit of intro on yourself and kind of tell us a little bit more about you?
Sure. Yeah. Is my audio delayed? Should I switch my earphones?
Possibly. I think it's coming in pretty clear for me.
Is it? It's good. Okay, good. Sometimes it's delayed because my AirPods are really old, I think. Anyways, hi everyone. I am Michelle Kwok. I am the co-founder and CEO of FLIK. We are a platform and community hub that connects female founders and leaders with students from across the world through meaningful apprenticeship. So as we know, or hopefully a lot of us know, that female founders are notoriously under-resourced. If you didn't know, female founders are 80% less capitalized than businesses overall, despite in the last 10 years, female-founded global startups have doubled. And so on our platform, female founders are able to get helping hands on their businesses, and students are able to gain career relevant experience, skills training, and mentorship under established female leaders. Is more important than ever that a lot of women, especially women of color, have role models in the space that resonate with their identity, can connect with them, and also can give them opportunities that otherwise wouldn't be accessible to them. A little bit about me is that I was a medical science student prior to all this. I had no traditional business experience or anything like that. And I was able to create apprenticeships for myself along the way with a lot of startups and female founders and leaders who elevated me to be able to say, I actually don't want to go to med school. I actually want to get into tech with no tech experience or no traditional tech education or experience or business education. And ended up becoming an entrepreneur and starting this company. And now FLIK is on a mission to advance women's economic participation and accelerate women-led ventures globally. And just like you said, yes, we've been able to match over 2,000 women, I think now 2,200 women in apprenticeships from 55 countries around the world. So it's been amazing to be able to work with global women founders, global students who otherwise wouldn't have accessibility to a lot of opportunities and mentorship. So thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thanks so much for that. I love that number just keeps getting higher and higher and higher as well. It's almost like you got to keep a ticker going on your website, right?
I know, we should.
So I do want to kind of talk about the Forbes article a little bit because I stumbled upon it recently and kind of dug into it. And what you just said sort of touched on that. Is one of the biggest points that I kind of pulled from the article was, women of color founders have been, I think it said 86% of last year's startups, which is absolutely insane to me. Like, I had no idea. What do you think is kind of causing that? And then what do you think that we're doing to support it or could do to support it outside of FLIK?
I think it's a great time in the world right now that women are all standing up for each other and are deciding it doesn't matter that there isn't as much representation in entrepreneurship. We are going to be the representation in entrepreneurship. So we're seeing more and more that women founders, especially women of color founders, are rising up and becoming entrepreneurs. But unfortunately, the entrepreneurial network is not built to support women, and especially women of color. So women and especially women of color, are disproportionately impacted, especially by the effects of things like COVID-19. I think in the article I mentioned that we actually did a survey of almost 300 founders from around the world, female founders from around the world. And we found that 72% of early stage founders could not meet their fundraising needs in 2020. A lot of it was due to COVID-19. A lot of it was due to old-fashioned pattern matching. A lot of the VC network has been built on exactly what I said, just like networks. And a lot of that was built a long time ago, decades ago. And we know that not a lot of women had power decades ago. And if this is a foundation for VC and it's still persisted through this time, then we can see why a lot of women are not getting the support that they need in terms of capital, in terms of resources. And so a lot of what we need now is actually dedicated capital for women founders, I think, and dedicated resources for women founders. It's not to say we should only be supporting women. It's so that we're able to reach the equity that's needed. And if you also didn't know, I think in 2019, women captured 2.3% of venture capital in all of 2019. And in 2020, it was 2.2%. And it's such a small percentage, but the best we could have done was maybe increase it. And the best we did was actually decrease it. So it's crazy to see how much support a lot of women are trying to give one another, but there still aren't a lot of women in those leadership positions that we need them to be in. And just another stat I'm going to throw at you is
Please.
that in the US, I believe less than 5% of VC leaders are female. And so all those people who are making the decisions about women's businesses, and a lot of women's businesses are women-focused businesses, are male and typically white male. And it's not to say that a lot of them aren't allies. It's to say that a lot of them haven't had the experiences that a lot of women have, and don't understand what women need, and therefore aren't able to justify why they should be spending millions of dollars on women-focused businesses, even though it's needed. An example of that is femtech. There's a lot of research that shows that there should be a lot more innovation in terms of like period tech. And that hasn't been happening over the last few years, especially because a lot of the people who are controlling the money, and there needs to be money put into femtech, are white males who don't understand what women go through when they go through their period. So that's just one example, but there's so many other examples of that. And there's a lot of stories that I can share, but that's a little bit of what I got into in that article, but there's a lot of different other pieces as well.
I would love to actually kind of drill in and talk about any specific stories that you have, mostly because I love your stories, but also how kind of it relates to femtech too, because you touched on something that's super interesting, right? Why did it take us so long to get Thinx underwear, right? Like, why is that a forever concept? But could you tell us like a story of either like a success story that you've had with someone at FLIK, or because I know there's tons of those, or anybody with femtech in particular that like you've worked with or talked to?
Yeah, so a success story, but it took her a long time to get there. I will never forget the first time that I met Paulo Rodriguez. She is the founder of Unbound. She works in sexual health tech for women. And and she was trying to tell investors, we have to be investing in women's sexual health. You don't understand what a lot of women go through, especially during menopause or if they're having cervical cancer. There's a lot of research that goes into us needing to invest in women's sexual health. And she actually had cervical cancer and like went through it and realized that there needs to be so much more tech that goes into women's sexual health to support those who go through like cervical cancer or go through menopause. And so she started this company called Unbound. And she had done all the research behind it. She had previously worked at Deloitte as a consultant, and she quit her job to start this company.
Love those stories.
Yeah, she was like, I don't want to, like, that was her dream job. Like, she was like, but I know that this is a need, so I'm going to do this. So I'm going to quit my job. She quit her job and she thought that she was going to end up getting capital because she's like, this is such a needed thing. She's talked to so many different women. She has testimonials from a lot of women who need this. And she quit her job and she was basically like, I was slaving away in this small, dingy office that I got for myself by myself, and everyone said no. So she actually had to end up being, in order to keep her company alive, she had to work as like a 50-50 raffle ticket girl at one of the stadiums close by. And she was literally a Deloitte consultant before this, and she was doing this for her company, and she believed in it so much. She was selling 50-50 raffle tickets at night, and then she would go back to the office to continue working. And so she was telling us a story, and she was like, I would go to every investor and she was like, I would tell them I had cancer and I know we need to do this. And they would all say no. And she said, I had 309 investor rejections until I hit the 310th. And it was finally somebody who had just known somebody who had the same story as me and finally understood that this was something that's needed. And a few years later, they were valued in the millions.
Wow.
And she's one of the top women in sexual health. She now works in New York. And every other founder that I talked to, every other female founder I talked to knew of her because she's just like that well known in the space. But imagine if she had stopped on the 300th, right? She was like, I've talked to 300 investors and they all said no. She could have just stopped, and that happens to so many other female founders, right? And it's not
great
just
ideas.
with great ideas. And it's not just the female founders who are in femtech that are struggling. It's female founders who don't look like even the typical female founders who are successful, because the typical female founders who are successful look like Whitney Wolf Herd, like they're white female founders. And I'm just going to do one more story and then I'll bounce
Bring it. I love it.
But one of the big stories that really hit me was when we did the survey for the future of female founders, we asked our founders, a lot of them being BIPOC founders, we asked them, do you think the Black Lives Matter movement is going to offer significant support and push for Black female founders going into 2021? And over 50% of them said no. And I was like, I wonder why. So I ended up talking to a few of our Black female founders. One of them, her name is Nena Umelo. She runs a company she's a founder of Black Hair Management, and they create products for Black women's hair. And I didn't even realize, I didn't even think about it at the time, but she was telling me about how there's a whole culture around Black women's hair. They want to be proud of their hair. It's very different the way that you have to manage it. And after listening to it, I was like, I totally get that. That's so different from me. I literally just go in the shower and I come out. But I totally understand. There's so many other people who have to manage their hair differently. And after like 10 minutes of asking her about it, I was like, I totally get it. And she was like, yeah, so after the BLM movement, I really thought there was going to be a lot more support for Black female founders. And what I found was that a lot more people were reaching out to me. And I was getting a lot more meetings, but I realized nobody was willing to write the check. People wanted to get the meeting so that they could say, oh, we met with a lot of diverse founders. Oh. Look, we took a picture with diverse founders. And she said, I was just running around. It was wasting my time more because people were making me run around for their validation. And they would spend 45 minutes asking her why Black founders Black women needed different hair products. And they asked her why they thought this was going to be even a good business idea, even though she already had product and traction. And she already had testimonials from all these Black women who said that they needed this product. And they would spend, she said, every meeting is the same. Every meeting, they would ask her for 45 minutes why anybody needs this product. And she was like, they didn't even try to understand our culture. They didn't even try to understand me and where I was coming from, anything about our customers, because they just weren't the typical, they didn't look like the typical successful founder. And that's a problem beyond just like women not looking like a successful founder. Most BIPOC women also don't look like the typical successful founder.
Could you define BIPOC women for me?
Like Black, Indigenous, people of color. It's definitely been a much larger topic recently. I think with people identifying as BIPOC and telling their stories, and so I've taken a lot more time to talk to a lot of different founders, even also a lot of LGBTQ founders who have gone through similar, but like they're obviously different, but similar types of discrimination, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been really interesting speaking with a lot of different founders and understanding what they have to go through and why founders need Black female founders, BIPOC founders, all these underrepresented founders really need more resources and dedicated funding in order to survive.
And that's so interesting that you label it as discrimination as well, right? Because it absolutely is. Like that's what it is, and we should call it what it is, right? It's not just undervalued or marginalized groups or whatever, right? It is active discrimination in a way, right? And I love what Tanya's comment here about that checklist mentality. I'm curious, did you ever kind of face that same mentality when you were looking for funding or when you were looking to get started? Were you facing a lot of like in your personal network when you were trying to get started with FLIK? Did you run into a lot of that mentality? Could you tell us a story about that?
Oh my gosh. So many. I literally don't even know where to start, because I remember going into this entrepreneurship program for the first time after meeting everybody. Literally so this entrepreneurship program that I was part of, less than 18% of our cohort were women. So most of them were men. I met them. I was friends with them. 3 months later, some of the guys came up to me and they were like, Michelle, we just wanted you to know that we actually thought that you were just a social butterfly when we first met you. Like we thought that you were just like, you didn't take anything seriously because your personality is just so like bubbly or something. It was something about how I was just like really nice to people and wanted to talk to people all the time. And they were like, oh yeah, we just thought that, you don't take anything seriously. So we never really thought that you're going to start a company, but like really good for you for starting FLIK.
Oh my gosh.
And and that happened to me so many times. Like,
well, it kind of speaks to that like mentality, right? Of like how many, and show of hands, feel free to drop this in the comments, y'all. But like how many women have heard you're bossy, right? Or when you're just coming off as confident, or your personality sounds bubbly when you're just being transparent and honest with someone, right? So it's interesting to see like those biases. I'm glad it's not just me. Thank you, Dorina.
Yeah, so many people have said that to me where they're just saying, oh wow, you're just like really nice. So I never thought that you're gonna I was like, what does that have to do with anything?
No founders are nice, Michelle.
Yeah, one person literally said to me, he was like, and that's why people didn't approach you and my co-founder Ravina. They're like, that's why people didn't approach you and Ravina to be their co-founders, because we just didn't think you took stuff seriously. And I was like, what did that even mean? Stories like that happen to me a lot of the time, where people don't identify me as a founder or people, when I say that I'm a founder, they make a joke of it because they're just like, oh, haha, this like she kind of thought she could start her own company. Like, that's so cute.
Haters gonna hate, Michelle.
I get that a lot. And then when we were one of the worst stories, I was so angry. One of the worst stories was when we were starting FLIK at the beginning. We're trying to open a bank account with our small business advisor at one of the big banks in Canada. And he spent an hour telling me why this wasn't going to work. He was like, I'm an entrepreneur myself. Like, I'm starting a business in my garage. And as an entrepreneur to an entrepreneur, I just wanted to let you know that you should like definitely expand to men or like you should make this for men because there aren't going to be enough women and your target market is like only half the population. So, and he spent like an hour telling me why my company wasn't going to work as I was opening a bank account for my company.
Yikes. Mansplaining women founding to you. Awkward. How's his business doing?
Yeah.
No, hey, just kidding.
Would like to know. I would like to know. No, and I ended up talking to the CEO of the bank because I was so angry. And the CEO was like absolutely mortified. But it was, one of the worst experiences I've had to go through. I was so angry by the end. But that's happened a couple times to us. Even when we're talking to investors, a lot of investors say the target market is too small. It's just like female founders, and there's not enough female founders out there. There's like no female founders out there. And people don't even realize there's actually a lot of female founders. They just don't get the funding, which is why investors don't get to see them.
That's so interesting too. And I wanna make sure we dive into kind of how FLIK works before we get to flip over and talk to Tanya. So I did want to just kind of pivot a little bit, if that's all right with you. Could you talk with us a little bit about how FLIK works? What would be like best practices? What do you do? How do you get started, right?
Yeah, so if you're a student interested in getting, career relevant experience, skills training, and mentorship with established female leaders, it's super easy. I mean, both sides super easy. You just sign up on our platform. You can go to weareflik.com. It's weareflik.com, and literally sign up. It takes like 5 to 10 minutes to sign up, and then we verify all of the profiles. And then, as a founder or as an apprentice, you're able to view everybody else's profile that is on the other side of the portal, and then and request people. You can filter out for people who are super interesting to you. So in certain industries, who are certain skills, you can connect with them, and you can like request to connect with them like it's LinkedIn. Like we've been called the female version of LinkedIn before. So you can check out people's profiles and request to connect with them. We facilitate an introduction, and then we provide like documents for the apprenticeship. And beyond that, for both founders and apprentices, so like for founders, we have a founders hub so that female founders can connect with one another, so that we have a lot of female founders that are super like-minded and are able to connect and chat with one another. And then on the flip side, same thing for apprentices. A lot of students who are like-minded, looking to transition their careers or looking to build their careers, are able to connect with one another. And then we provide different resource hubs for both. So for founders, we've partnered with this company called Built First to offer our founders over $300,000 in startups perks.
Wow.
From like Airtable to Stripe to Canva, and basically all the top vendors that you can think of that you would need as a startup founder. And then for students, same thing. We're building out resource hubs for like free resume templates, cover letter, basics in like digital marketing, basics in finance, like all these things that can help them advance both in their careers and in their academic experiences.
Love it. Love it. Well, we are going to have some time to ask Michelle and Tanya some questions at the end, but it is time for us to say goodbye to Michelle for just a moment and welcome on Tanya. So thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And give me one moment here. Okay, so next up we do have Miss Tanya, and I actually was introduced to Tanya via another webinar that I believe it was specifically for women empowerment, and just something about her vibe and her entire energy really spoke to me. She recommended different books and different actions. I'm sure you saw her active in the comments. Like, she's a very vocal and strong voice, and I absolutely loved that about her. But she partners with corporations to promote cultures of equality and educating and elevating diverse talent from within. She does own Tiggett Co, and I would love for her to come on and tell us a little bit about that, but also tell us a little bit about her and her personal journey as well. Give me one second.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Tanya, how's it going?
Good. I always have this sepia tone lighting in my office, no matter what time of day it is. I have a really bright, happy light pointing at me right now. So we're having some crazy weather here. We're getting storms. So I live in Ohio. So nice to meet everybody.
Awesome. And thank you so much for coming on. As I said before, and I know I've fangirled over you enough times and told you, is something about your energy, something about your vibe that I just dig. And I don't know if it's maybe that stone wall thing going on behind you. I don't know. But I personally dig it. Can you tell us a little bit about Tiggett Co. and just your personal story, where you came from and where you're going?
Sure. So I'll get to Tiggett Co. in a second, but my background is really, I always say it's a circuitous path. Coincidentally, we have a very large Spanish-speaking audience, and my first career was as a Spanish teacher. There's not a single person in my family who spoke Spanish. I truly, when I heard the word, I can remember this so clearly, Sesame Street. I was 4 years old watching Sesame Street on TV, and I figured out that this whole segment in another language I couldn't understand, and I connected agua with water, and I was like, wow, there are people who understand that means that. And my love of language and really a love of communication, just started at that age. So I went to school to be a Spanish teacher, which I did for a number of years. I taught kindergarten all the way up through the university level. I got my master's degree at The Ohio State University. So I have 2 degrees from there. Go Buckeyes, if anybody's an Ohio State fan. And it's just been a real gift. Oh, see, Michelle loves Spanish too. I'm getting a little rusty, so I'm a little sad about that. But I do have a book recommendation I'm going to come back to in a second. But how did I end up working with women in technology? As I said, it was a circuitous path. In my academic career, I discovered that I really, as much as I love developing people and teaching them Spanish and seeing them communicate and have meaningful interactions, I wanted to do that in the real world. So I started seeking out careers in corporate America. And I had no background in business at all. My whole background was in academia. So I hired someone to teach me how to network. And it was one of the smartest things I ever did. She taught me how to negotiate salary. She taught me how to interview people from C-suite down. And so this invaluable skill set ended up coming back years later when I got my first job in corporate. And I was working in a call center as an assistant manager, and I started forming Spanish as a second language initiatives there and running those across a footprint. So I worked for JP Morgan Chase. By the way, it was Bank One, JP Morgan Chase for a dozen years. And I used that language skill throughout that. But that visibility from the work that I did for all these volunteer activities ended up getting noticed. My facilitation style is very energetic and it's very immersive. So I had a colleague who said, hey, why don't you come and help me with this women's leadership class? And I said, I don't know anything about women's leadership, and I'm the last person you should be asking. And she said, please just come observe. And I did. And thank God I did. I went to observe the class, and people were asking questions about, promotions and strategy and networking. And I had to sit on my hands because I was so surprised the number of women in the class who outranked me and were asking these questions. And after that, I said, sign me up. I'm really passionate about helping people figure this out, like people had helped me to figure it out. And by the way, it doesn't mean that I had the answer to everything, and still don't. But that ended up being an amazing career path that I never anticipated. So I was simultaneously doing my job at that point in learning and development. So I was providing communication classes to technology and business project managers. Then I was also writing and creating programs on the side, teaching Spanish, training employees in the bank to teach Spanish. And that led me to forming my own company. So I left the firm because I wanted to go the entrepreneurial route, and I had a fantastic career in corporate. So where did Tiggett Co. come in? I left to actually do Spanish language immersion, and within a year of me rolling out those classes to adults in my community, I had friends in corporate saying, can you help us with our women's leadership program, because our women are not showing up confidently. They're not managing their performance discussions. They're not getting visibility and opportunity, and we need your help. And I ended up just offering a couple programs, and that led to the formation of my company. It was not called Tiggett Co back then, but that's what it's called now. By the way, that's not my branding. I actually did a focus group and they said, you are your brand and people like your last name. They like Tiggett. It's an energetic, short, fun name. That's all people call my husband, by the way. Most of our friends' kids don't even know his first name. They just know him as Tiggett. If you quizzed him on his first name, they wouldn't be able to tell you. So I was resistant.
I double got it.
Yeah, exactly. So I was resistant to that branding, but the name of the company, I think, is not the point, obviously. It's Tiggett Co for a reason that I partner with other people, although I do most of the facilitation. I go into corporations where they have women's leadership initiatives. Technology has ended up being the main focus of that. And I am so blessed that I work with women on a global basis around the world to help them to strategically manage their career conversations, to be heard, to be seen, to be more strategic. How do you leverage your relationships? How do you make an ask to move ahead? And so it's really helping women defy the odds, because women can enter into pretty much any job area. That's great. Getting one promotion is really, really tough. It's getting that second promotion where the wheels start really coming off the bus. And then there's attrition. Of course, you had fantastic stats there, Alicia, by the way, too. That's the reality of the women I work with in the corporate environment. So it's defying the odds to move ahead. If it's promotion, great, go for it. If it's keeping you happier, more engaged and upskilled, creating more visibility, then I help you with all of that. And the last thing I just want to say is it's career strategy. It applies to men too. It doesn't matter who you are. The difference in my programs is that a women's experience is different from men in those career conversations, in how we manage strategy, what we will be willing to ask for or not. Mm-hmm. I do a ton of surveying. So one of our differentiators is that we are data driven. I've worked now with over 8,000 people globally. 95% of them are women. And I can tell you the attitudes, best practices, and blind spots of women who are sitting in Singapore, who are sitting in Argentina, who are sitting in New York City, Tampa, UK. It's almost identical globally. And that's a shared comfort that we're in this together. And it's also dismaying to me that we're in this together, meaning that we've got to get more women moving up and forward. And it's just empowering one another and equipping one another with that knowledge and strategy on how you do it.
And so speaking specifically to that, then what are some tools, without like giving away your whole toolbox, right? Because I know there's a ton going on there, but what are some tools that you use to help women kind of, I guess last time we were talking, we sort of called it that entitlement gap, right? That idea that, you know, women should be asking for that promotion, not waiting for it to happen, in a similar attitude that, you know, men have, right? And approaching that with a little bit more confidence, right? So aside from just sort of changing that attitude, what other tools can women use, or what other resources can women use to kind of promote that mentality?
I mean, one thing is shifting our mindset that, yeah, I mean, there's systemic issues, right? It's not so cut and dry, like it's all systemic and that's the problem, and it's all women and that's the problem. We have to meet in the middle. So mm-hmm. I do disagree with some articles that I read where they say the system has to change. And I'm like, we have to control what we can control and influence as much as we can. And yes, the system absolutely needs to improve. That's for sure. I do absolutely support that and agree with that. But it's us shifting our mindset. It's such a fear-based that I find when I survey women and in the conversations, like we're afraid we're going to be braggarts. We're afraid that we're going to be so eye-driven that our teammates are going to be turned off by that. That what if my manager doesn't want to listen to me? And those are realistic fears. I'm not saying that they're not unfounded, but one of the tools that I help with is that shift in mindset. And it's getting women really fired up about we have more responsibility financially than men do overall, meaning that there are more women who are single head of household. There are more women who have childcare individually. And then you have elder care on top of that. So financially speaking, why wouldn't we want to maximize our earnings by asking for more money? Why wouldn't we want to maximize our value in our jobs so we're not downsized when there's a reorg going on in a company or there's a buyout? So part of it's mindset shift. in encouraging and equipping women and empowering us to push beyond that fear. By the way, been there. So I said, I'm not preaching from a mountaintop. I'm there with you on this. And so mindset, and there's a book, let me put it in here. It's called Mindset by Gerald Black. This is a teacher of me.
No worries. I was actually going to ask you exactly about this book, because I remember last time we spoke, or rather last time I saw you speak at a webinar, you had mentioned this book, and I wanted to kind of dig into it a little bit, because I've done a little bit of reading here and there. I haven't finished it, but I want to kind of dig into why this book is so important to you, and why you feel like it's such a great resource for women.
Because, well, the book, it's written by a researcher. I believe she's from Stanford, if I'm not mistaken, in the state of California. It's all about how a fixed or a growth mindset impacts our success in life and in career and in child rearing, by the way, as well. It's got great anecdotal stories of successful businesses. You know, Chrysler is one of the businesses profiled. And if you have a fixed mindset, meaning that things must be perfect, that you will not stop until you have absolute perfection. If you fail, you will give up. The extreme of a fixed mindset is that you have to win at all costs, so much so that you will cheat, you will lie, you will steal, you will commit illegal acts. I mean, that's an extreme form of it. But yet, we have that with parenting, where we just want our kids to be the best in everything. And so it's not about the effort and the journey. It's a fixed mindset is what's the outcome. Well, the growth mindset is the growth and the journey and the effort and the learning. So, okay, I tried and that was horrible, and my performance review didn't go like I thought. So what are you going to do about it? That's the point, is to not get stuck in the fear. But it's also, you know, I'll go back to like academics, you know, it's not, I'm going to cheat on this test just so I can get the A, so I can be, I mean, we had the college cheating scandal that was huge in the US.
I was just going to talk about that too. I feel like we're on the same wavelength today.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a huge, where parents were paying to get their kids into sports so they could get into schools, because academically they didn't have the grades. So very wealthy people were paying and cheating the system. And now there are people going to jail for it. That's a fixed mindset. The growth is, I fear something, or I may be uncomfortable. I'm still going to try it and I'm going to move forward. And so that mindset shift, I'm really thrilled that, you know, big thing that we do and the outcomes of my programs is the confidence levels. It's not about fixing women. Who doesn't want more confidence? I mean, it's not about arrogance either. We're drawn to more confident people. And it's really, yeah, grit. Exactly. That's a good one. Eric just put that in the chat. So a growth mindset is one of my missions. And the reason that book was so important, and it still is because I had such an aha that why I can be so bold and so growth minded in some ways, other ways it's not that I won't move forward. I'm delaying myself too long. So it gets stuck.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, cut you off. I'm curious though, can we dig into that a little bit? Where are some, if you don't mind sharing, where are some things where you found, oh no, that's a personal fault, and were able to kind of check yourself?
Oh gosh, I had one. I don't know if I shared this with on the last panel discussion that we were on. I'll give you a class. This is one that just happened a couple years ago, and I was so bothered by this. I was the president of a nonprofit organization I live in Columbus, Ohio, and this is a national nonprofit, and then they have chapters in each state. So we had at that time the largest chapter for women business owners for this nonprofit. And as my role as president, it was normal. I'd have to get up to the stage, and I'd make some comments and do some opening things. Okay, no big deal. I do public speaking for a living. So I get up on the stage, and at this one, we had about 300 people in attendance, which is a large number for that event. A lot of state politicians, because people were running for office, a lot of movers and shakers. And all I had to do was acknowledge our sponsors and make a few opening comments. And I have, a loose script written by the executive director. I look it over. I ad lib some things because that's just my style. What I said next was not in my mind. It was not in my script. It was an out of body experience. It really was. I could blame it on fatigue from a lot of travel, whatever, but I can't make the excuse that it happened. So I said, and so I want to thank our most important sponsor, and I named this company. So in other words, I was saying nobody else mattered. And I thought, why? Like in a second, oh my God, why did I say that? Like this, I don't even think that way. I don't even talk that way. I value everybody. But I said our most important sponsor, and I named this company. And what made it worse was, again, like very visible, a lot of movers and shakers, but then half the audience did this. And
oh no.
And I remember thinking, really, is it really that bad? And then I made it worse in something I coach my women to do. And I go, well, sorry. I was so angry at myself. Like, how could you say sorry? You coach people to do that. You're usually good. Like if you make a mistake, you're like, oh, erase that, back up. That's not what I meant to say. I'm really usually very good off the cuff, and it was just horrible. So much so that I decided, that's it. I'm never coming back up here again. I'll just make up a reason and I'll let the rest of the board do it. And I'm not going to go through that. I called a friend of mine who's a news anchor, and I said, I need some advice on this. And she started laughing and said, my God, out of that whole audience, 5 people will remember it tomorrow. And maybe 1 person will remember it 2 years from now. Get back up there. So the growth mindset is, I lost sleep over how stupid I was. It's everything that I think as women do. Oh my God, I sounded so stupid. Now they're going to think I'm not successful in my career. I'm really not that good. Blah, blah, blah.
No one's going to take me seriously. Yeah.
Oh my God. It was every self-defeating, stupid thing I could say to myself. And then I decided, screw it. I have to bounce back. I can't coach women on this and not do this. And I decided next time I get up to the podium, I'm just going to have the most fun I can have. I'm just going to be my best energy, best mood. I'm excited to really speak to them, and we're going to have a great time. And I did it. So it just is that's just like a quick example of when we make mistakes, it's easy to just beat ourselves up and then get stuck. And it's the rumination. The rumination is my growth personally.
And how did that next conversation go when you're just having, or that next spotlight go when you're just having fun and kind of just doing your own thing? How did it go?
It was easy. It was what I do. People make a mistake, but it really taught me a lesson. And I've taken improv classes to just say, just own it. And that's what I put in one of the comments. If someone calls you bossy, and so what's your point? Because I think it's being a yes and, because people don't expect you to. They expect you to be defensive. And I had a boss who called me combative once, by the way. And I said, I said, hell yes, I am. And who wouldn't be working for you and the things that you have put on me? And I listed all of the things where just his leadership was really ineffective. And he was shocked when I said, yeah, I am combative with you. Because that's a place of empowerment, oftentimes, to own things, and people don't know what to do with that.
Well, and that's interesting that you say that too, because I'm thinking back to my past, job experience as well, and thinking of all the times that someone's either called me bossy or combative or whatever it is, right? And like calling it out with facts is really the only way to get past it. And you're right, people don't expect it from women. Period. The end. Like they're all shocked when it happens, right? But I think I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit, so I kind of want to circle back. Any other resources that you have in particular for women, and in particular for kind of maybe rerouting that negative self-talk as well? And I'm asking this for purely selfish reasons.
That's okay. It's like I said, we're all in the journey together. I have so many recommendations. I'm like looking at my bookshelf right now. In terms of negotiation, I will tell you this. One of the new passion areas I have is around persuasion and being persuasive, because if you find something that really matters to you, I say it's a heart thing, it's passionate for you. It goes back to what Michelle was saying. It's like when you have a vision and a direction and you don't want to give up, you will stick with it. And that passion, that grit, that determination will come through. One of the books, and I'm not recommending this because this is a book, it's written in Portuguese originally, but it was also very widely published in Spanish and then, of course, eventually in English, is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I read that book prior to me leaving my corporate career. And the premise of the book, there's a moral, and I won't give away the story, but it is such an amazing book. You get to the end and you go, oh my God, it's got such a great ending. Yeah, and Michelle, it messes with your mind because the quick moral of the story is, if you just would go that one extra step, just that one extra step, no matter how hard it is and how nothing's changing and you think you're up against the odds. Oh, see, it inspired her to be an entrepreneur too. Yeah, Michelle, I left my corporate career when I read that book. And then there's another one, Finding Your Own North Star by Martha Beck. That's I'm revisiting that journaling because I'm getting ready to make some shifts in my own career. It's time for me to shift. I still want to be a talking head somewhat, but not as much. And my gift is in creating programs and then driving those programs to support women. So those are two that I really love. So Finding Your Own North Star, gosh, I have a ton of them. But back to that persuasion piece, just quickly, in negotiating, you can have all these tactics, which you should have, and you should rehearse these, and you should plan for those conversations. You should plan why people are going to say no to you, and you bring up the no first. So it shows you put yourself in their shoes. But if you bring the heart piece on why does this matter? Why? Someone will get it, and they will get it eventually. And if you have a manager who's not getting that, I mean, gosh, I don't want to say this, Tango, but I just would rethink things. And I think you have an amazing culture for everything I know. But I mean, in negotiating for anything, right? More resources, project scope, etc. Bring your passion to why it matters. So that's a new area and a new book. There's a book, Persuasion Equation. And the author's last name is, I think it's Mark Rogers. And that book was very eye-opening for me in negotiating some of my contracts more effectively, by the way.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you so much for all of the recommendations. I'm a huge bookworm myself, and I appreciate, Carla, thank you so much for throwing all of this in the comments and taking notes for me, because I have the inability to type and talk at the same time. And thank you again, Tanya, for throwing all of that in the comments as well. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and pull Michelle into our conversation as well for any questions that anyone in the audience has. And then just as a heads up, we are going to try and close the conversation a few minutes early because Tanya and Michelle are both incredibly busy and have wonderful calls that they need to get to as well. So any questions or comments or anything that you wanted to talk about with Tanya or Michelle, please feel free to drop it in the comments now.
And Alicia, I think I didn't do a good job of saying this. And the reason I just get so excited about talking about women and women moving forward and having a seat is a lot of people mistake me for a coach. And I do a lot of informal coaching. It's really, it is an interactive, engaging program experience where you're equipped with tools on that strategy. How do you have your voice heard more, whether it's in writing or verbally? How do you show up and create that visibility and that brand, and then leveraging strategic relationships? And I will tell you, sponsorship is critical. Michelle, I know that you know about that, and that means that somebody who's going to put their name behind you. I would not be in front of you today had it not been for several key sponsors who really took me by the hand and said, women need to hear your message because you're helping to close the gap one woman at a time in asking for pay, in seeking out opportunity, raising your hand, and not letting that fear keep people stuck.
Love it. And I'm curious, when you received that funding, was it from I suppose other women or I'm just curious, because since we're talking so much stats with Michelle about, women of color founders and women in general founders having difficulty finding capital. I'm curious kind of what your journey was there.
My journey is self-funded. It really is. No, I'm not saying, and again, this is not the nature of my business and where I am. It's okay where it is. I'm getting ready to go into a different direction, though. I look forward to sharing that with you at some point. And so I'm already examining the funding routes. And I know what Michelle is saying. I mean, the funding for women is really, really challenging. There, again, a book, I can't remember if it is in the Confidence Code, I believe. There's a story about a man who was a founder. He had multiple successful multi-million-dollar companies he sold. And then he transitioned to being a woman. And as a woman, same brain, same experience, same business acumen. I mean, she did all these things and could not get funded. And that's when she said, I was so shocked at really gender discrimination, especially in the VC world. So it's just crazy that it exists. That with that, you're the same person, really, and yet you can't get funding.
Well, and it's funny that you should bring this up as well, because Michelle and I were just talking about the last time we talked about Jessica, and I can't remember her last name, but could you tell us a little bit about Jessica?
Yeah, so exact same type of story. Jessica Bussert had before her transition, she had worked in tech for years, and right after her transition, same person, same brain, that same tech company in London, UK, told her that she wasn't competent for the job anymore and fired her. And right after firing her, told a lot of other tech companies that weren't willing to hire her. And so she had to transition her career, transitioned into nursing, was doing really well in nursing until her supervisor found out that she had transitioned and fired her, and was like, "You're not competent for the job anymore," told everybody else in the state that she wasn't competent for the job. So she wasn't able to get a job in nursing, ended up starting her own company in health tech, mixing together both of her experiences prior to transitioning and after transitioning, and would walk into rooms and people would be like, "I'm not going to even take this meeting." But was able, terrible. And beyond gender discrimination, there's a lot of LGBTQ plus discrimination, and it's crazy.
It's crazy and that's why, it's a reality. It's people's reality. And that's why it's just critical that we are focusing on this. And Michelle, I don't know if you get this flack or not, but I get pushback on, why are you so focused on women and not, people in general or diverse communities? And I keep saying, look, as I said, career strategy is career strategy. I can serve whoever wants to be served, but who comes to me for that help is women. And that's who I've been called to serve. So I'm happy to work with other people, and I do occasionally. Do you get that same pushback?
Always, every single time. They're always like, why is it just women? And
women need it. That's the answer.
I like it worse for you. Morgan Stanley did a survey and said that because women-focused businesses aren't being capitalized in the way that they need to, we're leaving $3 trillion of opportunity on the table, because women still don't have those opportunities to elevate and be able to use resources and startups that don't exist to help them on their journeys.
That's wild. We do have a couple of questions. Can you tell us about why it's important to expose women to entrepreneurship from an early age? And that's a question for both speakers.
Oh my gosh, please. That is literally stuff that I talk about all the time. So another stat from our Future Female Founders report is that 81% of women of color founders said that they did not have a role model in the space that was a founder as they were growing up that resonated with their identity and gender. And therefore they didn't think that they could be entrepreneurs until much later. And they all identified that they wish that they had a role model, that they wish that there had been representation so that they could feel like they could be entrepreneurs. Like me growing up, I did not have any founders in the space. So I literally remember thinking to myself, like, I will never be a founder because there's nobody who looks like me in the space. Like, why would I even try if there hasn't been anyone else that has trailblazed in the area? And everybody that I knew was like a doctor or a nurse. So that's kind of what I put myself in a box as being for the rest of my life. And that's dangerous, I think. And that could have happened to me for the rest of my life if I didn't accidentally kind of stumble upon entrepreneurship, and most people don't.
Yeah. So I agree. I mean, I said I never thought of myself as a business owner or a founder. I was just a Spanish teacher. That's what I used to always say, or I'm just this teacher, or I'm just this or that. And and still, even in my space, specifically in what I do, it's tough to find people who I can identify with. I would just say, start looking. Like, if you have ideas, just start interviewing people and who they know and asking questions. And even within corporate, by the way, because you never know what ideas or plans people have or who they know. So I would just start asking people questions about their background and topics that interest you or ideas you have.
And I think I mentioned this earlier that I have to go for my other call. But if anybody has other questions, feel free to LinkedIn message me. I'll try to answer. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you both for joining. Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody who dropped any comments or questions or anything. You will get a recording of this video. Thank you so much,
Thank
y'all.
you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.